Syracuse men's lacrosse's last performance just didn't cut it. There was a lot left to be desired after its loss to top-ranked Notre Dame, but tonight, SU turned the page onto another beastly opponent. It was a battle for the upstate region between SU and number 13 Cornell, but after a 67-minute dogfight, only one could come out on top. It was a double overtime thriller, and we're breaking it down right now on Orange Press Pass. Welcome inside the CitrusTV studios for Orange Press Pass. Alongside Srikar, Rajendran, and Adam Cohen. I'm Steven Sklar here to break down a down-to-the-wire battle between number 4 Syracuse and number 13 Cornell. But after all the drama, it ends 18-17 in favor of the Big Red, a bit of an upset down in Ithaca, New York. Syracuse started out on a 7-0 run, and there was a sense that we could relax for the second half. But there's never really a dull moment, is there, Srikar?
No, there really isn't. And honestly, I want all three of us to just collectively just take a deep breath. Because that was not only the best game of lacrosse I've seen this year, but it was probably the best game of lacrosse I've seen in my life. Purely off entertainment, I mean, that had everything. I mean, you talk about the end of regulation, leading into overtime, both these teams going offense for offense. I mean, that is exactly what you want out of watching a lacrosse game just as a spectator. However, if we're looking at it from Syracuse's perspective, pretty brutal loss. You know, you really had it. You go on a 7-0 run to start the game, and you don't keep your foot on the gas. That has to be a little bit troubling for SU. Absolutely. I mean, I got to give my first thought as a one-word answer here, and that's how. How did Syracuse let a Cornell team that they were beating 7-0 at one point back into this game? How did they blow it in overtime, and how come they just took their foot off the gas? It's that type of question that Syracuse should really be asking themselves in the locker room right now. How? Why? How? Why? How did it go wrong? Why did it go wrong? And what can we fix?
Yeah, a lot of good questions, Adam, and I think we're going to answer the how part right now as we take a look back at some of the highlights from down in Ithaca, New York. Like I said before, number 4 Syracuse, number 13 Cornell down in Ithaca, and Syracuse running out of the gates hot. That first goal right there, courtesy of Sam English off the assist from Owen Hiltz, taking a 1-0 lead. Jump ahead 3-0, 7:30 remaining in the first. Pass down from Jake Stevens, and that one gets buried on the man up by Michael Leo, 4-0 Syracuse. Jump ahead 6-0, charging down the field, Stevens. A pass gets popped up, middle of the field. Who's that? It's the chosen Dwan. Billy Dwan makes it 7-0, capping off a 7-goal run for SU Srikar. A lot of great offense from the Orange out of the gate.
Well, 100%. I mean, everyone looks in sync. Everything is flowing together. I mean, this is a really confident SU team at the start of this one.
And there's Michael Long to make it 7-4, so Cornell's starting to make a bit of a comeback. But we jump ahead, 5:20 to go in the second. And who is it? Well, it's Luke Roa making it 11-5 Syracuse and nearing the end of the first half. 40 on the clock, and Cornell with a big opportunity, and they strike. Spencer Wordham. It's 14-10 Syracuse at the half. Now we jump ahead, 7 minutes to go in the third. Syracuse again, Luke Roa again make it 16-10. Cornell not going to sleep just yet. You got the goal right there on the man up. C.J. Kirst, it's going to be 16-12. SU at the end of the third, and Adam, Syracuse starting to take its foot off the gas a little bit.
Well, the foot's been off the gas for quite a while, and Cornell's kind of previewing what they did in the fourth quarter, finding ways to score consistently.
Yeah, just like they did right there, 20 seconds to go, and that one's going to tie it up. Ryan Goldstein with the equalizer. 10 seconds to go now. Oh no! Blown lead by the Orange, and Cornell's in front 17-16. But the Orange with an opportunity to tie it one last time before the end of regulation. And it's Sam English, the man that got it started, ends regulation with a goal. Double overtime now. Syracuse had its opportunities, but none as clear as this. C.J. Kirst buries one, 18-17, your final score down in Ithaca. And it was a game of runs for the Orange and the Big Red, Syracuse just happened to fall on the wrong side of that run, Srikar.
Yeah, it definitely was. The offense was all there, but as you can see, the game just kept creeping and creeping towards Cornell's favor, and they made the most of their opportunities, Adam.
They absolutely made the most of their opportunities, and I can't help but sit here feeling like this just wasn't a major shock to see Syracuse lose this one. They took their foot off the gas after the first quarter, and clearly Cornell slammed their foot on their gas and found a way to come back and eventually win this one.
Well, we paint a decent word picture all the way here in Syracuse, but now we bring in a reporter who was there to take all the sights and sounds in live, and that is Adam Gotkin. Hopefully you were staying dry down there, but more importantly, just wow, what a game that was. There was a lot of drama, but there was also a lot of tension down there, Adam. We saw that Syracuse's offensive coordinator, Pat March, was even ejected between the first and the second quarter early on. Did you happen to catch what happened in that exchange with the referees?
Yeah, that's a great question, Stephen, because no, I didn't, and no one really knows what went down. He was arguing an offsides call is what we were told, but really Pat March is someone who's known to argue about pretty much everything. That's just kind of his MO, and Gary Gait had no explanation of why he ended up being ejected, and that ejection was very important for the rest of the game because Pat March, of course, the offensive coordinator of this offense, is very similar to what you think an NFL offensive coordinator would be like. He's calling the plays, and the end of the game in overtime when they have to draw something up, that's March's responsibility. And now Gary Gait is a great lacrosse coach. He's a great lacrosse mind, but that's not his job. That's not what he's used to doing. He's not used to running the huddle. That's what Pat March usually does. So with him out, there was a lot that hurt this Syracuse offense. And while we don't know exactly what happened, Gary Gait said it's not something that'll happen again.
Adam, I hope Ithaca was treating you well. You don't look too shabby considering the conditions over there, but I wanted to ask about the end of the game and the tension between, all sides. I mean, the fans, both of the teams. What was the energy like in that building?
I mean, it was an energy unlike anything that I've really ever been in because, of course, this wasn't just a great game. This wasn't just a double overtime game, but it was one between two teams that know each other very, very well, just about an hour apart. I mean, we'll probably see you guys before the night is over, and there's also some connections between this team. CJ Kirst just came by us about 10 minutes ago and asked if we knew his brother, Cole Kirst, who played for Syracuse a couple years ago. CJ really, followed that team when his brother was with them. So he knew those guys, and this game meant a lot to him, and there were a lot of Syracuse fans here, and you just said the weather, it wasn't great. So everything just kind of piled on top of itself until it turned into pure chaos, and that's what overtime was. The ball was going back and forth, turnover after turnover, and the energy was just unlike anything else. It was really something special. I think maybe this home crowd helped out Cornell a little bit at the end because there were some more Cornell fans here. There was the Cornell women's team that was here after they played Syracuse earlier in the day, but really, it was just an awesome energy, and I do think it helped Cornell a little bit at the very end.
Hey, Adam. Adam here. My question really has to relate to the discipline of this Syracuse team. And did they sort of lose their discipline throughout the game, or was this just more Cornell waking up in that second half?
Yeah, I don't know, and I think that's a really hard question to answer because Syracuse has been in situations like this before this year. You think back to the Maryland game, to the Army game. The Orange are not new to being in late game situations, and because of that, I think that I give a lot of this credit to this Cornell team. When we talked to CJ Kirst, when we talked to Connor Busek, the head coach of Cornell, they were just saying how the grit is really something that is installed into these players from day one inside the program. When they step on campus here in Ithaca, it's all about being gritty. It's all about being guys who are going to be able to perform in situations like this, going to be able to come back after starting the game down 7-0, and that's what these guys showed today. This is a smart team. It's a team that never let that deficit get to its head, and because of that, I think you really give the credit to Cornell. Syracuse has to be better. I mean, you can't not say that because you can't give up a 7-0 lead and then end up losing. But again, at the end of the day, I think that you just give the credit to Cornell for coming back. This is a Cornell team that has also been in situations like this, has lost games in overtime, and has also won games in overtime. So I think it's a little bit 50-50, but I don't think you can go all in on the saying that this is all Syracuse being bad.
Well, thank you very much, Adam. Sorry to let you go, but we do have a lot of show left and not a lot of time to get through it. Bad for Adam, but lucky for the viewers out there. We've got a short break coming up, but when we come back, we'll go below the surface and look into what actually happened out in Ithaca. Stick around. Back in business here on Waverly Place. It's Orange Press Pass. I'm Sklar. This is Srikar Rajendran. And that is Adam Cohen. As I mentioned before, Syracuse started off hot, but it all fell apart after that initial run. And you could say the biggest culprit behind this collapse was the man in net, Will Mark. The most important number is the 18 goals allowed, but looking deeper into the stats, the 47% save percentage is his lowest in a game since the loss to Army. So, Srikar, have you lost any confidence in the goaltender after today's contest?
Losing confidence would be a pretty strong word. Really shaky day in net, don't get me wrong, but I do think his defense kind of let him down at the end of regulation. I still buy into the talent of Will Mark and the progress he's made this season. It's not what we're used to seeing in this Cornell game, but I look back to that, that whole stretch before the Notre Dame game. Will Mark could do no wrong. He was really solid in net. So I have no problem in, kind of backing that talent and thinking that he can get back to form.
I agree with you on the backing that Will Mark talent. And you mentioned that sort of 3-game, 1-week stretch where he didn't let up more than 7 goals in a game. And that's really, really impressive for any goalie, much less somebody behind. Syracuse's defense, which is clearly shaky, clearly hasn't been on its game lately, and I would say hung him out to dry tonight.
Yeah, certainly true, especially when you factor in just how great the SU offense was today. It makes it that much more curious how the Orange could even lose this game. The 7-0 run, 8 different goal scorers. By all indications, the O was cooking. Adam, is that at least some sort of positive takeaway from this game, or are you just negative Nancy after this?
I don't want to be negative Nancy. I would say that the offense was cooking at a point in this game, but they also turned the stove off, which if you want to continue cooking and you want your food, you want your chicken to not be pink and give you salmonella, you need to keep the stove on and keep things going. And they just, as we've said probably 1,000 times already, they just took their foot off the gas and really couldn't keep things going.
I think the offense, I'd say it's partially an issue tonight because, yes, it did go dry in the second half. I think there was a pretty good scoring distribution, though. Owen Hiltz, a first-half hat trick. Joey Spallina, it's been 5 games since he's had multiple goals in a game. He did it today. But when you put up 14 in the first half, you can't put up 3 in the second. So I think more consistent production is definitely needed.
I will say the analyst in me does want to make it clear that if you score 17 goals, you should still win the game, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
But on the converse, 3 goals in the second half, not nearly enough, right? I think we can all agree on that. Again, not a great day for the Cuse as a whole, but for Joey Spallina, on the other hand, a big part of this offense. He did his part in this one, absolutely. 3 goals and 4 assists in his highest scoring game since the Cuse beat High Point. Srikar, what did you like out of the sophomore? Number 22, like we said, he was kind of cooking today also.
He's definitely cooking. And I think Joey Spallina over the past few games has kind of taken that facilitator role where he's trying to set up his teammates instead of focusing on himself, which is great. I think that is a great way to play lacrosse. But I think today, it was more of that Spallina show and making that magic like we're used to. You know, he's still a threat on the attack at any given moment, really shifty, a true playmaker. Adam, you and I both know he has it in him. But, I mean, this game really shows how talented he really can be.
He absolutely has it in him. I will say, this was his first game over 6 points in exactly 31 days since that high point game. So his offense has also kind of dried up a little bit as he's, I guess you can say, moved into that facilitator role, but he shouldn't lose his goal scoring touch, which is extremely important if you really want to continue scoring and keep this high-powered Syracuse offense, which seems to be your strong suit right now. Look, he had 3 goals tonight. He put 4 shots on net. That's a good night from just about anybody, but you would still like to see more out of a kid who people have termed a superstar at times.
I guess the question is, would you rather see him in that facilitator role, or if you would rather see him in that goal-scoring role? We're almost out of time in this segment, but before we go to break, it's time to name the Orange Press Pass player of the game, and tonight's honor goes to C.J. Kirst. The 2023 Tewaaraton finalist showed up for the Big Red when it mattered most, burying the game's final goal to seal the deal. In total, the senior netted 5 goals and picked up an assist, finishing second on his team in points. He was genuinely all over the place today, setting a new season high in shots on goal, shots total, and he made the most of his opportunities, but none of this should be news to anybody. Kirst has done this all season long for a Cornell offense that ranks 4th in the country in scoring. With nearly 3.5 goals per game heading into today, Kirst is roughly 20% of that offense. So, in other words, that was just another day at the office for the team's most prolific scorer. Congratulations to CJ. With a 32-piece and 13 points alone after the fourth quarter, well, I'm sorry, I'm just reading what's on the teleprompter here, but we've got a break coming up right now, and when we come back, we're going to be looking into the future on Q's Countdown. Don't go anywhere. We've got a lot left in show.
Welcome to my house. Lately, not my happy place. Everybody's pretty tired of each other. The parents were not themselves. My little brothers were morphing into small creatures. The walls were closing in. Clearly a case of too much family, too close, 24/7. And there's a lot of that going around right now. If this sounds like your house, try going someplace new. YourLifeYourVoice.org. You'll find lots of ideas to help you handle the family stresses of being confined to close quarters. YourLifeYourVoice.org. It might not get you out of the house, but it could help you find a little more breathing room.
Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. Prediabetes does. With early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test today. Go to doihaveprediabetes.org.
Well, we're back on Orange Press Pass. Steven Sklar, Srikar, Rajendran, Adam Cohen, and you might notice that we're no longer at the desk. We're actually at the wall. We've got a game cooking up behind us. You can see it right there. It's called Crystal Ball, and we're going to be looking into the future. I'm going to give these two a couple of prompts, and they're going to tell me what they think of those prompts. They're either going to call me an idiot or they're going to call me a genius based on what I say. I know that sounds like a great time to you guys.
Yes, it absolutely does.
So we're going to have a little bit of fun with this one on Orange Press Pass. Srikar, I'll toss it to you first. This has to do with the Syracuse defense, which you mentioned a little bit earlier in the show. It's been on the rocks, a little bit shaky lately. Do you think they have what it takes, though, to put the pieces back together as we get into the late stages here?
I do, Steven, and I think it's mainly because of the talent along the lines. You look at Caden Cole, you look at Billy Dwan, you look at all these defenders they have, Jake Stevens. I mean, this team really has a lot of talent, Adam, and I think if this team just plays as a group moving forward, especially this unit, I have no doubt in my mind that they can get back on track. I mean, we look back at that Duke game, playing airtight defense on guys like Brennan O'Neill and, Dyson Williams. Who says they can't do that again?
I mean, nobody's saying they can't, but at the end of the day, they didn't seem to make the adjustments tonight. So I'm going to say no, they can't get back on track, because in order to come back and actually win some of these tough games against ranked opponents, you need to be able to make the adjustments. Cornell was absolutely baffled by Syracuse's defense early on. There's no real way to slice it otherwise. But once Cornell figured things out, Syracuse did not make adjustments, and if they did, they were unnoticeable. And without those adjustments, you're not going to be able to stop, UNC and Virginia, which they still have on their list with some very, very good ball players on those teams.
Yeah, that's a good look ahead right there. Two fierce ACC foes that they're going to have to face later in the season. But you talk about adjustments right there, Adam, and I'm going to come to you first on this one. Adjustments always lead back to coaching, and that man, Gary Gait, that's right behind us, standing in front of the crystal ball, which kind of looks like just a blown-up image of the sun if you really look at it closely. But that's Gary Gait right there. You might have heard of him. Pretty good lacrosse player, pretty decent lacrosse coach in this day and age. But is the seat warming up for Mr. Gait just even a little bit?
No, the seat is absolutely not warming up for Gary Gait. Why would it be warming up for Gary Gait? He's only been here 2 years. Sure, his record in those top 5 matchups isn't exactly great, and his record against ranked teams hasn't exactly put it all together. But the thing about Gary Gait is he's finally getting his guys into this program. Again, he's only been here 2 years, which means his time at the transfer portal or in the recruiting world hasn't been that long on the men's lacrosse side. So now that he's starting to get his players, his guys in his positions, I think things will really start to look up. And look, this team at the end of the day is ranked number 4 right now. They're sure to drop after this loss, but you don't have your seat warm up if you're ranked number 4 in the nation.
Well, Adam, I'm in lockstep with you, because the one hump he had to climb was getting past a ranked team, and he's done it twice this year. You look at Johns Hopkins, you look at Duke, and it could have been 5. I mean, Maryland was an overtime loss. Army overtime loss, Cornell overtime loss. So, there he has the pieces in place. He has all the talent he needs. He's gotten over the hump in the sense. I don't really see why he would be, on the hot seat per se, if he's shown market improvement from previous seasons.
I think the argument a lot of people would have is that at some point these overtime losses have to turn into overtime wins if you really want to take that next jump.
Yeah.
And that next jump would obviously be a Final Four run, a national championship, and that's gonna kind of be my next prompt for you here, Srikar. The Syracuse team, high expectations coming in. They played a close game against Notre Dame. Like you said, that Army game, the Maryland game, the Cornell game from today, a lot of overtime losses and a lot of close games against ranked opponents. They haven't come out victorious in a lot of them. And if you want to get to a national championship, you're probably going to have to win some of those tighter games down the stretch. So then the prompt for you is, how far does this Syracuse team go?
Well, Gary Gait tends to say it a lot in his post-game press conferences, but every overtime loss, every loss is a learning moment. And I think this team is going to have things at least a little bit more figured out come tournament time. This team has all the talent it needs, all the pieces are in place, right? So it's about, finding some energy. You can't be weighed down emotionally after back-to-back losses against Cornell and the top-ranked team in the nation, Notre Dame. I mean, Syracuse just needs to kick things into gear, and I think they can. They'll use these learning moments, stack the days, and I think they'll be fine.
I mean, you keep mentioning these learning moments and lessons and whatever. I mean, how many times do you need to be taught the same lesson, old man? Like, it's really important, at least to me, for them to really learn from this. And that's why I don't think this Syracuse team can get out of the first round of the NCAA tournament. I do think that they will make the NCAA tournament. It's the 16, 17, 18 best teams in the nation. And Syracuse is definitely one of those top 16 teams in the nation. But I don't think, because they just can't seem to get it done when it counts, I just can't see them escaping the first round. And some of the problems that you're going to find with those ranked teams, because that's what the tournament is. You're facing the best teams. This isn't going to be where, UConn's facing Stetson in the first round, like the men's March Madness tournament. This is where Syracuse may be facing an ACC foe in the first round again.
I'm going to go a little bit off script here and just toss you one more question, starting with you, Adam. At what point does Gary Gait need to get past that first round, get to a semifinals, get to a national championship game before the seat starts to warm up? Combining kind of two questions here.
So I really like that question. It actually brings some more in-depth analysis. And the thing is, if Gary Gait fails again this year and he doesn't get out of the first round, he doesn't even make the NCAA tournament, it is what it is. Again, this is year 2 for the guy. You're not going to throw him out on the doorstep in year 2. But I would say after this, you need to be a lock for the tournament next year. And then I would say in year 4, you need to be challenging for a national championship, or else that seat is going to start to warm.
I'm with you, but I'll go maybe one round less. I think if next year, if nothing really works out again, then the seat really starts to warm up. I could argue you're on the hot seat by that point, because that'll be back-to-back years of disappointment, right? I mean, this team is really famed. You know, it's a slow process. Obviously, you want to make the tournament this year and maybe do some good in the tournament as well. But if that doesn't happen by next year, I think you're really in some trouble.
The only thing I want to ask is how much of a disappointment really is it? You know, the year before Gary Gait took over, John Desko's squad went 4-10 and was absolutely abysmal in pretty much all facets. Gary Gait has improved this team, and there's clearly an upward trajectory here. So
sure, but
I don't know if you
can
really say next year you're done.
But getting bounced out of the first round would always just leave a bad taste in your mouth.
Sure, but hopefully you come back next year and you start challenging for things, which is kind of what I think needs to happen.
Well, you know, you're both right to a certain degree. At some point, people are going to start to want to see the wins pile up, the playoff appearances pile up, and, of course, they want to see Syracuse get back onto the national championship side of things. But that's all that we have for Crystal Ball. Fun game. Love it. Let's do it again sometime soon. All right?
Sure.
We have another break coming up, but shortly after this, Srikar, Adam, and I will return, and we'll close out this show taking a look around the NCAA and previewing our next show. Don't go anywhere.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back. Dad! You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
For the final time tonight, Steven Sklar, Srikar, Rajendran, Adam Cohen on Orange Press Pass following Syracuse men's lacrosse is, 18-17 double overtime nail biter of a loss to the Cornell Big Red over in Ithaca. A heartbreaking loss for sure. But now the big question is the big picture. Where does this loss put Syracuse in the wide scope of the ACC and the national standings? And, well, you can take a look right on your screen. Syracuse 9-4 overall, 1-1 in the conference. Notre Dame, the only team undefeated in the conference at 6-1, also the reigning national champions. Where do you think that Syracuse sits in the scope of this whole conference, Srikar?
I mean, it's only 5 teams, so I can't really say too much without. I mean, Syracuse is a great team, but look at this conference. I mean, Notre Dame, obviously the top dogs. Virginia, you got coming up next. Great record there. Duke, a great team that Syracuse did end up beating, but could pose trouble down the road. And UNC, another solid team. So, I mean, everywhere you look, I mean, the ACC is absolutely loaded.
The ACC is absolutely loaded, and that's why I really want to zero in on UNC down at the bottom with a 6-4 record. They're currently unranked, and that's something of note because if Syracuse wants to sneak into that 4-team ACC tournament, they're going to need to beat UNC in a couple weeks, and that's really what should do it for Syracuse to make the postseason, quote unquote.
Well, a lot of great men's lacrosse talk, but while we're looking ahead at our next show, Syracuse women's lacrosse takes on Pittsburgh on Saturday at 4 o'clock. That'll mean an 8 p.m. show for us here at Orange Press Pass and Citrus TV. And, well, that's women's lacrosse, and I lied. We're not done with the men's talk just yet. Before we go for the final time tonight, some final thoughts on Syracuse, this game, this loss, what it means. Srikar, I'll start with you.
Well, you gotta really get things into gear before it's too late. I mean, I've talked about this team as one that could really bounce back, but at the end of the day, if you don't bounce back soon, that's really going to spell trouble. I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate in this point, But I think this team has what it takes to bounce back, but it's really a difficult road.
My final thought is another question. I might be like the Riddler at this point, but does this team sink or swim? We haven't really seen them give the swim ideology because they have a solid record against those ranked teams, but they don't seem to always get it done. Again, a lot of nail-biting losses, and that to me is sinking, not swimming. So you have 2 games left this season, one against UNC that I just mentioned, and one against Virginia. It's very important that you win one of those 2 games to lock up a spot in the ACC tournament and give yourself a chance to keep going.
I guess only time will tell. Surely a strong strength of schedule moving forward. For Srikar, Rajendran, and Adam Cohen, Steven Sklar on Orange Press Pass, signing off. Good night, Syracuse.